Saturday, October 2nd, 1999, was a gorgeous fall day in the mountains of Colorado. Jaryd Atadero and his children, 3-year-old Jaryd and 6-year-old Jocelyn, were at the beautiful Poudre River Resort, which was owned by Allyn and his twin brother, Allyn. The two kids were anxiously waiting to go on an excursion to the nearby state fish hatchery with members of the Christian Singles Network group, of which Allyn, who was divorced from the children's mother, was a member. Allyn was extremely hesitant to allow Jaryd to attend the outing, as he was personally unable to join the group. His daughter, Jocelyn, really wanted Jaryd to join in the adventure with her. After a bit of pressuring and begging, Allyn finally agreed, believing the group would only be visiting the fish hatchery a couple miles down the road. From there, the 11 members of the Christian group, with Jocelyn and Jaryd in tow, headed to the hatchery for their quick trip. For reasons unknown, other than it was such a nice fall day. The group decided to take an early afternoon hike up the Big South Trail, 15 miles west of the resort. This was an 11-mile trail, 40 feet in elevation, located within the rugged Comanche Peak wilderness. This was against what Allyn agreed to, and the trail was not overly suited for such a young child as Jaryd, only being 3 at the time. After parking the cars, the group headed onto the trail, not realizing the terrible fate that would shortly ensue. At some point, they decided to split into 2 groups. The faster hikers could move along at a brisker pace, and the others could take a more leisurely approach. Nobody seemed certain if Jaryd ran along with the faster leading group, or if he had stayed with those lagging behind. At this point, it's of no matter. Whichever group he was with, he was poorly supervised and managed to separate himself from them completely. 11 other people completely unaware of the little boy's absence. What do you guys think? Do you think a 3-year-old could run off this easily? Or were the adults just completely obtuse towards the attention needed of a young child? They were about 1.5 miles up the trail when Jaryd ran ahead of the group he was with. He noticed 2 fishermen and stopped with them to chat. Apparently, Jaryd asked something about if there are bears nearby, or if they saw any. The fishermen didn't think much about Jaryd being alone at that point, reporting they saw a group of hikers no more than 50 to 80 feet down the trail, according to a Larimer County search and rescue report. The last the fishermen saw of Jaryd, he was walking rapidly up the trail adjacent to the Camp 2 sign, indicating the second of 16 backcountry campsites along the trail. The fishermen, unknowing of the danger that lay ahead for little Jaryd, watched as he ran back towards the trail. They are believed to be the last to see Jaryd before he disappeared. Some members of the 11-person hiking party reported hearing a scream, according to the investigation report. Jocelyn told her father Allyn later. She did too. Allyn asked her later on, what kind of scream was it? Did it sound like somebody getting attacked or somebody playing with someone? She said it sounded like a playful scream, like someone was going up to tag him. Upon realizing Jaryd was missing, the group, after searching for about an hour, had 2 members return to the resort to tell Allyn of Jaryd's disappearance. They said, "You need to sit down. Something happened to Jaryd," Allyn recalled. I asked them, "What happened to Jaryd?" Thinking he fell down and got hurt. They said, "He's okay, we just can't find him." Allyn immediately jumped into his vehicle and drove to the trailhead, screaming, "They lost my baby! They lost my baby!" Upon arrival, he ran up the trail, but quickly discovered it would be impossible to find Jaryd on his own. The canyon trail was just too rugged, with a million places a young boy could lay unnoticed. Allyn, realizing a search team would be needed, returned to his resort to have his manager call the Larimer County Sheriff's Office and file a report. Luckily, the manager already had done so by this time. A sheriff's deputy and a Larimer County search and rescue member soon arrived, followed by more of each. Bill Nelson, now a recently retired undersheriff with the Larimer County Sheriff's Office, was in charge of the search for Jaryd. When searchers arrived, it appeared to be just another mission, he said in a recent interview. "Absolutely, I thought we would find him. Yes, it was a young child, but my thought was we should be able to get in there with our people and do what we do and what we have done hundreds of times. Find the person. It might take a few hours to find the child crying or hiding someplace nearby, but we would be done before midnight." Nelson went to his vehicle to have a nap, just before midnight, telling his staff to wake him when they found the boy. When he awoke the next morning, he became concerned. The search for Jaryd hadn't gone as planned. The search through the night brought no new leads. Sunday morning, Allyn and Jocelyn heard the sounds of a search helicopter making its way up the canyon. I remember saying to Jocelyn, "Look, there's the helicopter. They are going to find your brother." And we watched it fly over us. The Huey UH-1N helicopter from F.E. Warren Air Force Base in Cheyenne, Wyoming, flew to what was then the Fort Collins Loveland Municipal Airport to refuel prior to starting its search for Jaryd. It didn't take long until the helicopter returned, but it struggled between the fuel load and mountain conditions. The chopper stalled out, falling 100 feet, crashing up the Big South Trail. Aboard were 4 members of the Air Force and Mark Sheets, a Larimer County Search and Rescue member. Luckily, everyone aboard, although injured, all survived. Added problems came when nearby members of Search and Rescue had to halt their search for Jaryd to help with the new emergency that unfolded. The crash immensely added to the stress of the situation, growing more frustrating once the national media took notice. TV trucks and reporters began to swarm the remote site. "We quickly realized what we were up against," Smith said. "We had searchers down and being brought out on stretchers. We had a missing child lost in the cold overnight, the Air Force closing off the crash site. Emotionally, it was overwhelming, and you could see it in the eyes of everybody involved." As the second day of searching came to an end, search teams were no closer to finding Jaryd. As the search stretched into the third day, searchers combed riverbanks and up steep slopes. Dive teams peered into small pools left in the narrow, slow-moving river. A plane made passes overhead, hoping to spot clues. With every intense hour that searchers came up empty, the crush of questions squeezed law enforcement and searchers even harder. Not just from media, also from the Atadero family as well. Well-meaning but ill-equipped people were increasingly hounding the Larimer County Sheriff's Office and Larimer County Search and Rescue to allow them to help. Psychics professed to know where Jaryd was. A barefooted man with a mule showed up at the search site, wanting to track him down. An American Indian came to perform a burning sage ritual, begging the mountain to release the boy. Theories concerning Jaryd were expanding away from rational possibilities: killed by a predator, fell behind boulders and died or drowned in the river, to the less plausible but still possible theory of abduction, to strange conspiracy theories. A variety of people were voicing those theories to an emotionally vulnerable Allyn and his family, growing tensions between the family and searchers. Nelson said things became so tense between the family and searchers that he had to take Allyn and his family for a hike up the trail to hash things out. Allyn and his family were certain that Jaryd had been abducted because we couldn't find him. I might have felt the same way if it was my son, but we knew abduction was slim. It was the theory that, despite long odds, was gaining traction. But who could have abducted Jaryd? Investigators questioned everyone, from Allyn to members of the Christian Singles group to the fishermen who were presumably the last to see Jaryd. They talked to Allyn's ex-wife, who was living in San Diego and came to Colorado after hearing Jaryd was lost. No red flags. There is only one easy way out of the narrow canyon, back down the trail. On the day of Jaryd's disappearance, one of the first searchers quickly hiked up to where snow covered the trail and saw no tracks. Hiking out either side of the narrow canyon would require a climb of 1,000 to nearly 2,000 vertical feet through thick trees and downed logs on a 45-degree slope. As the search continued with no signs of Jaryd, the mountain lion attack theory became officials' prevailing thought. There were mountain lion prints found in the area, but nothing conclusive to indicate Jaryd might have been killed along the trail. Wildlife experts said it wouldn't take much for a mountain lion to carry a 3-year-old boy off the trail. With Jaryd's trail growing colder, the sheriff's office met with Allyn and his family, making the difficult decision to call off the official search after a week. Others were allowed to continue the search on their own. I remember that Saturday, after they called off the search, going to Jaryd's closet and putting away his dirty clothes and picking up the tank and toy soldiers from the bathtub, where, the day before he went missing, he took a bath. Allyn said. I realized then I would never see him again. Saturday, October 2nd, 1999. Jaryd Atadero went missing without any clues left behind. A week later, the following Saturday, the search was called off. This outcome being the absolute worst scenario for Jaryd's father. Full confirmation of Jaryd's death would not come until June of 2003, unfortunately, once again leaving more questions than answers. On June 4, 2003, hiking partners Gary Watts and Rob Osborne were traversing off-trail in the Big South Trail area when they stumbled upon a white Tarzan tennis shoe in a talus slope, 500 vertical feet above the trail. They found the other shoe, a brown fleece jacket and blue sweatpants turned inside out. Once we saw the clothes, I knew exactly what happened to him. A mountain lion killed him. We felt that finding the items would hopefully bring some closure to the family. The top half of Jaryd's skull was found, and a single tooth in the same general area. Bill Nelson reported, if a cat took him, which is what I believe happened, the cat would have taken him someplace and buried him, and, with all the activity that was going on, it probably would have left, because we would have scared it away, and it would have came back later. The clothing was sent to the CBI. When they tested Jaryd's clothing, there was no mountain lion hairs, no DNA, no blood, nothing on his clothing. Experts said his clothing, especially his jacket, would have been torn apart. The shoes were in near perfect condition, still bright white, like they were only outside a very short time. In one of the reports it stated, the reason why we didn't find any DNA, blood or hairs on Jaryd's clothing is because either he or something removed his clothing before he was attacked. Jaryd's father stated, I was told by many lion experts, mountain lions don't pull clothing off of you, especially your pants, and leave them there on the mountain inside out. The Cougar attack theory began when searchers, aided by rescue dogs, found what appeared to be Jaryd's footprints and handprints near the top of a boulder field above the Big South Trail. The cat tracks were 1/10 of a mile from the child's prints, but there was no sign the two paths intersected. Searchers reported no other signs of a lion attack were present, such as drag marks, blood, or clothing. I can't help but feel the mountain lion theory is nothing more than the convenient answer. National Guard wasn't brought in because they were worried about the added expense. Many local volunteers showed up but were not allowed to join the search and turned away under threat of arrest. Jaryd's direct family was threatened also for persistently wanting to join the search. It's reported 20 dogs were available, yet only 4 were used. Multiple groups with tracker dogs offered services and were turned away. A local tracker and military man spent 2 days searching before taking a break. He drew a map for Allyn marking an X for the most probable location based off his search. It was brushed off as nonsense, yet that was the exact area Jaryd's clothes were eventually found. This case has garnished many debates on what happened to Jaryd that day. Personally, I believe Jaryd's death lies in the hands of those too involved in themselves, willfully neglecting or too inept to provide basic skills and awareness to properly care for a young child. The fishermen say they last saw Jaryd at 11:30. The hiking group didn't notice Jaryd was missing until 12:15. How does 45 minutes go by before you notice a child is missing from a trail that would require constant supervision due to terrain? Allyn reluctantly agreed to a short trip to the fish hatchery, a 1.5 miles down the road. This group made a decision, against the will of Allyn. Their decisions are what lead to, and in the end, cost the life of a 3-year-old boy. What happened after they lost track of Jaryd is only speculation. My theory goes as follows. Jaryd ran back towards the trail after talking with the fishermen, unable to spot the group he wandered. It's possible he heard them, but was unable to determine their direction. Human tendency is to follow the path of least resistance. He was most likely wandering the trail until they started yelling. The screaming echoed from multiple rock faces and directions, confusing Jaryd in which direction to go. He probably scrambled the 500 feet away from the trail, putting himself in an area the search teams didn't think he'd go and out of range for others to hear him calling. Temperatures dropped to lows of 28 degrees Fahrenheit, probably colder in the mountains. Cold, wet, exhausted, and probably dehydrated, he most likely succumbed to hyperthermia. In death by hypothermia cases studied, 20 to 50% are related to paradoxical undressing. Your brain basically confuses the cold as hot. The person removes their clothing to alleviate the feeling of overheating. I think Jaryd lay under this pine tree for shelter, ultimately removed his clothes and passed away shortly after, his body being consumed sometime later by coyotes, bear or cougar. This would explain why no blood was found on his clothing. What do you guys think? Is my theory plausible, or did something more nefarious take place? Allyn has managed to find peace with it all. He believes Jaryd lies safely within the arms of God, stating Jaryd, at times, sends him signs to let him know he's okay. If you like this video, please check out some of my other content. Please give a like and leave a comment as well. Thanks for watching.